Parker from SICEEP. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm sorry that we're running late.
That's right.
And, yeah, thank you. Tim is going to be able to give us the perspective of the Infrastructure New South Wales via a project management role with the new SICEEP development. So what's interesting about this morning for me actually is that the SICEEP development, the scale of it's been in my peripheral vision while I've been doing the research on this and trying to work out what's going on, who the stakeholders are, where the projects are, where the funding is, who the decision makers are, etc. What I realised this morning is actually the only really big project on the table is the SICEEP project. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, first of all, thanks very much. I know it's been a really long morning. I guess you're sitting there. I saw a couple of guys dozing off at the back. That's really good.
We know they're the model builders.
They're the model builders, are they? They've been working all night.
They've been up all night.
Well done. Listen, thanks for letting me come along and talk about this. I'm not a designer. I'm a design manager. That's my background. I've had experience working in Hong Kong on the Hong Kong airport, more recently in Sydney on the Epping to Chatswood. So I manage design. And the part of management is to try and get my designers to do the best job they can, because that's what building a good project's about. We'll just move on to the first slide. Okay. Look, Darling Harbour, I mean, you know, it's really interesting. UTS Business School has done some work on what is Darling Harbour, what does it mean? And they came up with this fantastic academic derivation of what Darling Harbour was and what it meant to the tourists. Quote, they love it. Don't know why, they just love it. And 25 million people visit Darling Harbour, made up of tourists, local people, and everything else. It's a fantastic spot. What the challenge we've got is not to just say, yeah, well, it's pretty good, let's just give it a coat of paint. It's actually to revitalise it. You know, actually keep the magic, but actually make the magic even better. As far as the project's concerned, there's lots of whispers and rumours out there. We don't actually know what the design is at the moment, which is pretty exciting. So when you hear people saying we're doing this, we're doing that, we don't know yet. We've got two competitive teams working on it. So certainly things like the existing building, they can be retained, they can be demolished, they can be relocated. It's all up on the table. Okay, the need. Now, Michael Brown, I think I'm going to employ him. He actually gave a really good view of why we need the facilities. So I'm not going to try and go all over Michael's work, because I think he did a much better job than I could. Look, it is about what has Sydney got? We don't have minds, but what we do have is really bright people. So the knowledge economy is really, really important. And that's what drives conventions, exhibitions, and really the other thing about this is that what's happened in the past is the facilities have been designed very much in a sector market. You know, we go to a convention, we go to an exhibition, we go to a concert. What you're seeing now in the market is those three markets are all merging. Often a convention is paid for by the exhibition. Often at the convention they actually want to have a big showtime. And so what we're finding is actually the three facilities all interact. And at the moment they're quite separate, they're being built separately. So one of the opportunities here is to actually blend the three together and actually make one magic place. Now, jump a bit quick. Look, and I think that's really, one of the other things I think is important to talk about Darling Harbour. When I first started this job, way back in September last year, you know, coming from a building background, it's all about the facilities, what's the latest whiz zooms, how big should it be? And then you go and talk to the organisers, and you say, why is Sydney successful? You know, it built the first convention centre in 1988. Why is it successful? And the answer is, it's facilities plus place. You know, the facilities, you know, if you go out, you can go to some brilliant facilities in the middle of the desert. No one wants to go there. It's actually a combination. And it became really important to us to recognise that don't just focus on the building, we've actually got to focus on the whole precinct. And we do apologise for the name SICEEP. We are going to change that. It sounds like some sort of Darling, but it was the best we could come up with at the time. The site. The site is about 20 hectares. It involves obviously the existing convention, exhibition and the entertainment centre. We've also pushed the western boundary out over to where the existing light rail was. Now, there's been sort of whispers and rumours that we're the reason the monorail's going. Partly. I think that the reality about the monorail is that it was actually nearing the end of its useful life anyhow. There's also a great big piece of space behind Darling Harbour that we think could be better used. You know, Darling Drive is not the most pretty thing. I think the other thing, when you actually look at the site, it is actually quite a difficult site, and I'll come back to that in more detail. But as I said, this is the facility, this is the site we're dealing with. The site has grown through the process when we recognise that we can't just leave Tumbalong Park. You've actually got to take the whole precinct as a whole. As far as constraints, we have said to people the Chinese garden stays. We've also said that we've got to maintain at least as much public realm space as we have now in the future. Okay, so the facilities. This is what we're trying to get. In essence, the convention, exhibition industry, and to a certain degree the entertainment industry is about size. What can I let? It's also about efficiency in that at the moment it does take quite a long time to bump in and bump out of things. So if you can make them work quicker, you can sell the space more often. So what we're looking at is facilities for delegates of up to 10,000. And that's basically going to be 3 dedicated plenaries, and also making sure that the entertainment centre is of a quality that you could take an international delegate to. Exhibition space. Currently there is about just under 25 in the main hall. We're looking at providing 40,000. The entertainment venue is actually one of the pieces of the puzzle that actually gets smaller. Currently, the existing entertainment centre takes 12,000 people. We're looking at 8,000. That's driven partly by finance. Unfortunately, entertainment centres don't make much money. It's also driven by the view that we already have all phones. All phones currently take 12,000 people. This actually provides a nice slot in the market at 8,000. But we recognise for it to be competitive, that we actually got to raise the game. It's got to be, sort of LA Live, Nokia Theatre type. It's actually got to be a facility that you can hold a red carpet event at. Meeting room spaces. Again, this has become more and more obvious. Exhibitions and conventions, they all need to be able to go. You can, do your convention, but then you need to go away and have a meeting, go and do your business negotiations. And of course, we're looking at a sort of a banqueting facility for 2,000. With that majestic view, you must be able to do better than we currently do. Going blue, I like having on pink.
What's that? That's the projector. Yeah.
Oh, okay, this is going to be good. I think one of the colours has gone off. Now, as I said, this is the blue mood we decided we'd enter into. Okay, so what we're looking for is the project isn't just about facilities, it's also about revitalising public realm. Public realm, in my view, is good, but it is looking dated. When you actually look at it critically, it is looking a bit dated down there. We also want to have a new hotel. Again, we're finding that the people that go to these conventions want a hotel on site. They don't want to go miles away. We're also looking at part of this process is we've actually got to pay for some of this. Unfortunately, commercially, these things don't pay themselves. So we're looking at actually, hopefully coming up with a design that allows us to have some commercial development. And the sort of development we're looking at is on sort of ground level. It's got to activate the precincts. That's going to be more retail. Above it, we're looking at possibly commercial offices, residential, student housing, again, that type of thing. And again, that'll come out of the wash. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. What I want to do here is just talk a little bit about how government, we've taken a little bit of flack from press and various other people about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I just want to talk through the rationale. A lot of schemes now, government goes out and hires a whole bunch of designers. It gets them to procure a master plan. Oh, it's come back. Fantastic. Oh, no. Okay.
I think it's a bold issue when we'll
That's all right.
over lunch.
That's okay. It then obtains concept approval. It says, okay, this is what we want. It then goes out to the private sector and says, okay, private sector, we'd like you to innovate.
There you go.
I'm sorry, it was a plug issue, not a bold
There you
issue.
go.
Got it.
Fantastic, there is light.
Yes.
So it goes out to the private sector and says, we'd like you to innovate. The government's already invested a huge amount of money into reference design. It's got its concept approval and it says we'd like to innovate. So what actually happens is the poor designers who get this say, well, we've just got to try and improve it. So they don't actually have that much scope. And you've also got this fantastic sort of tension between the people that did the master planner and the people doing the detailed design. Now, nothing else I've learned about designers is there's a few egos there. There's this fantastic little fight going on. The master plan guys go and say, they're ruining my master plan. The designers are saying, the master plan was crap, so, it's better anyhow. So, and then it goes off and obtains planning consent. Now look, that's not a bad approach if it's a small, one-off building. When you're talking about a precinct, it's like saying government knows best. Government, we know what we're doing. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. In my view, is that I think if you want innovation, you've got to let the designer have a free rein. You know, he's got to be given some guidelines, but he's got to be given the opportunity to develop and own the design. And that means really own it, not own the bits around the master plan. So we've come up with an alternate approach. What we've said is, you know, let's be right, what government's really good at is employing people like me that drive everyone mad, but try and run this project through to a pretty tight time frame. But what do we want? You know, and that's often the hardest thing. I mean, anyone that's worked with clients knows, what do we want? So establish the vision. And I think that's important. It's not just requirements. You know, I come from an engineering background. We're great at doing string loads of specifications. But what's the vision for this precinct? What do you want to see, Minister? You know, what do you want? Set out the standard requirements. You've got to say what do you actually want and determine a budget. Now, my view about design is good design doesn't cost extra money, but you've got to give people parameters to work to. Now, what we're doing here is we've done that and we've gone to the private sector and said we'd like you to put in a tender for the project. We want them to respond to vision and requirements. Now, the challenge of responding to the requirements is how do we hit the sweet spot? You know, we could end up with a really great urban design, but the facilities are no good. Great facilities, bad urban design. Or great urban design, great facilities, and we can't afford it. So it's trying to get three blended to hit the sweet spot. They've got to respond to the vision and the requirements. They've got to tell us how they're going to achieve it. They will produce the master plan, and that's why one of the challenges here is actually telling everyone, trust us, it will come. They've got to work within the budget, and they will be responsible for obtaining the planning approval. So one of the lessons being learned on recent projects is don't go out to the public and say this is what we're going to do, get planning approval, and then go out again and say we've changed our mind, and then go out again and say we've changed our mind again. It just doesn't work. The whole process becomes undermined. So our view is, once we've worked out what we want to do, and we think it's a good idea, then we should go through the planning approval process. Okay, so this is our sort of our toolbox of how we're going to get there. So what we've done is, we've worked out what we want. We've produced a set of urban design guidelines. We've engaged a design review panel. Peter Poulet heads that panel for us. We've produced some specifications. Now our specifications are very much high-level output specifications. Not how to do it, but what we want to achieve. We've got some key evaluation criteria which cover the range of things from design through to functionality, through to operations, through to cost. And then of course what we've done is we've encouraged the people bidding for this to engage great designers. Now the teams we have at the moment, on one side we've got, it's almost like, sounds like rings of a boxing match, it's a little bit like that though. We've got FJNT, Architects and LNN, they're on one side. Then we've got Hassel, OMA and Populous on the other side. Now I've worked with most of those companies either individually or in groups. Very, very strong companies. And the great thing we're seeing through the bid process is they are striving for excellence. Now, the proof of the pudding is when we actually see the designs and we see how much they're going to cost and make sure government can afford it. But the process so far, having watched from the inside, has been incredibly exciting. And I have to say, I think we're going to end up with a much better product than if we'd done it ourselves. Basically, the balance between people being driven both architecturally to budget to program is producing some really interesting results. This is the oxymoron. Natural boundaries. There's only actually one natural boundary, but there's four listed there. We talked a bit about the Western distributor. It's not going anywhere fast, unfortunately. However, what we're suggesting is accept that it's a constraint and deal with it. We've also got Pier Street, the light rail, and probably the biggest boundary there is the topography. One of the reasons Ultimo is so separated from the site is it's up one level and we've got the basin down the other end. And at the moment, the links, you know, I think it's like, how do I get to Ultimo from Darling Harbour? It's almost impossible. There's a few bridges if you're in the knowledge, but it's actually very, very poor. And as for getting down to Central, the UPN will be fantastic, but even with the UPN, it's still going to be a little bit difficult. So one of the things we've got to do is challenge those issues and try and get the better connectivity. So in the urban design, connectivity, this is what we see as one of the keys to this project. I think the reality at the moment is Darling Harbour is like a little island. You know, if you're lucky, you can enter the island of Darling Harbour, and it does turn its back on Ultimo. It's inward facing. You know, it's almost like there's a rich side of the city and the poor side. What we want to try and do is change that perception. We want to retain the sense of place. We think Darling Harbour has a great sense of place, but we think that will be enhanced by allowing people to get to it easier. Public realm, again, as I said to you earlier, we see there's an opportunity to revitalise it. We also see the precinct itself, the functionality can be improved. The water features there are great. In some cases, they do actually restrict how the place is used. So the public realm. Look, it's one of the, it's the magic ingredient. You know, you go there and you talk to people that come here. Often people that come to Sydney, the first place they go to is Darling Harbour. There's a certain magic about it, and I don't know what it is. I think, as I said, the academics tell me people just love it. It's a mixture of grass, sense of safety, just a nice place to go. It's also quite Australian. It's a bit in your face, a bit brusque, but it's there, and it's a sort of leveling. You get sort of rock concerts to sort of orchestras and things. What we're looking at is developing the character space based on the natural features and activities. You know, don't see Western Distributor as an obstacle, see it as an opportunity. So we're looking at what can be done with that to make it part of the place. Tumbleong Park and Chinese Gardens. For anyone that hasn't been to Chinese Gardens, you should go. It's really, really quite beautiful. It doesn't work so well at the moment. It's pretty well, you know, it's almost a walled garden, and you don't see much of it. And Tumbleong Park is a great green space in the middle of the city. Again, we want to retain it, but see, can we get better use out of it? Okay, so what's coming? The project's being delivered through a public-private partnership. What that means, in this instance, it's a social infrastructure. So government will be paying approximately $1 billion for the pleasure of this project. What it means is the government basically, it's almost like going to rent your TV. Government will actually pay for it on a month-by-month service charge. So it remains a government asset, but they're only paying for it as they use it. We're going through a bid process at the moment. We have two very strong bidders, and the tenders come in August. We're hoping to have a preferred tender by the end of the year, and then moving on to planning the process for the first half of next year. Our aim is to have construction commencing at the end of 2013 and actually have it complete by December 2016 for 10 years trips that year. And that's it.
Amazing.
So, questions? Abuse? Whatever?
Give us a preview of the project.
Sorry?
A preview of the project.
What it'll look like?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a very good question. I think, one of the other people, I think it's world class. I don't think it's going to be necessarily iconic. I think it's going to be, I think the buildings will look great. I think what will happen with the park is that it will, it's a bit like what's happened down there. I don't know if anyone's been to the children's playground. If you've got young kids, you just got to take them there, it's fantastic. But it's actually raised the benchmark. And what we've said to the proponents is, guys, don't think about going anything lower than that. That's the sort of start. So I think the public realm will be vastly improved. I think that there will be commercial development around the southern sector. I think the hotel is more likely to be around the northern sector because I think that's where the views are. I think the facilities themselves, they will be probably, in fact, I'm almost certain they will be the biggest and certainly the best in Australia, and they will compete head-to-head with Southeast Asia. So I think it will be one of those things that, I'm not so sure whether you'll go there and say, I'm going to show my friends it, but I think it will encourage more and more people to go to Darling Harbour. And the idea being is that side of Darling Harbour at the moment is like, if you go there after dark, it's just dangerous. So the idea is I think there will be life, I think there will be more shops and more things to do there. So I think it'll be very exciting, but probably I can't say any more because I'll be telling you what the bids are.
That's what we want to know.
We're happy to hear it.
It's Christmas presents, okay? It's Christmas. Wait for Christmas.
Chris.
Can I ask about the public-private partnership?
Yeah, sure.
Given what we've been seeing with Barangaroo, how are you going to make sure that the developers develop in the interests of the public rather than try and make more
I'm going to do something really, really strange here. I'm going to defend the private developer. I'm not going to say too much about Barangaroo because it is it's a government project, and I think they've got challenges. One of the problems is when government puts white shoes on and becomes a developer, it's often not only the developer that causes the problem. So what I'm saying to you is, if you look at certain development, everyone thinks, oh, it's the private developer making it bigger and bigger and getting more money. Invariably, sometimes you find that government's got their hand in the till, saying, because my share's bigger as well. And sometimes these things drive strange outcomes. And one of the strange outcomes is, government says, well, we're really happy to have these big public facilities, but we want the developer to pay for it. So the developer says, well, to pay for it, I've got to make my development bigger. And then it sort of tumbles. And I think the challenge here is the sweet spot. The challenge here is to say, guys, we do want development, but we have provided, these urban design guidelines provide certain constraints, and it's got to be the right balance. So you can't just, pave over everything, put huge blocks up. They've got to get the balance right. And it is difficult, it's going to be difficult to evaluate, and I think I've probably got about 6 million people in Sydney that will be looking very critically at what we come up with, and the City of Sydney will be looking even more critically at what we come up with, and to get the balance right. And at the end of the day, you can overdevelop. I mean, I've got background from Hong Kong, and that is a city that knows how to overdevelop. And the key here is to get the balance right, so you maintain Darling Harbour as a place to go. Will we get the balance right? I hope so. What I think we are looking for is only telling the public what we're going to do once, and not changing our mind 15 times. So that's one of the things we're trying to do.
Richard?
I think we are all pro-development, and we're interested, I think, in this private money in public spaces. So I do think that's, so we're not developer bashers. Can you explain, though, why, unlike any other city in this country, Sydney has allowed one construction company, namely Van Lease, to build most of itself, and how that has happened? Can you explain how that's happened?
No.
And how that...
Look, I can't. I don't.
What is your opinion of that situation?
Look, personally, I think the competitive process is really good. I think often government, when you start negotiating with a single company, you never get the best deal. And I think one of the things we've got, and I'll be honest, we've got Lendlease on one side, we've got Brookfield Multiplex on the other side. They're our two competing bids. I think the key about this is actually you focus. At the end of the day, this is a government asset. It's taxpayers' dollars, and I'm actually quite tight when it comes to taxpayers' dollars. So what we've got to try and do is drive the best deal we can.
It's just quite a phenomenon, actually, if you look at it, which through my research, which I'm partly looking at this, you can end up with a developer who is wealthy enough to build Barangaroo with their own money if they have to, and how that might happen, and not happen in Adelaide, not happen in Melbourne. It just interests me. And perhaps should be part of our study to expose, because it's kind of fundamental to how cities operate. If meritocracy is not work, I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm putting, is there a question mark over meritocracy in this city which has not been addressed since the beginning of the city?
I think it's a wider issue. I mean, I think we've seen two slides. I've seen one from Lendlease and one from Multiplex. And what they do is they have a picture of the city and they have red dots on what they've built.
What they've built. I've seen
and it's a good, and both of them build an awful lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good diagram.
It's kind of scary, as you say.
It's a scary diagram.
I mean, the key for us is that we've run a pretty open process. We had an expression of interest who would like to build it. We had 3 people come in. One since has dropped out. We've now got 2. From a government point of view, we're trying to get the best bid that we can.
I just wonder how it makes, because fundamentally Sydney, if you had to generalise about Sydney, it has a sort of a kind of a monolithic look. If you compare it to Melbourne, there's a genetic mix. There's a sort of as a result of that diagram that we're alluding to, there is a sort of a sameness thing which has controlled the architecture for certainly since the 60s. And I just wonder, I mean, because that's your job in Infrastructure Australia to, if nothing else, to be aware that a genetic mix, an meritocratic mix, is what actually enlivens design, because that's what enlivened design in Melbourne. And I think we're falling behind here.
Look, I spent 11 months in Melbourne, and I'm kind of inclined to agree with you. I think Melbourne just does things a bit different. But I think, you know, there's no shortage of great designers.
Well, Melbourne has more competitions where the people who won the competition do the job.
And Richard, I think that is actually, and we won't talk about the project I won't mention beginning with B, but if you actually look at how that travelled.
Oh, that's a more complex understanding.
But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is say the guys who win it get to design and build it. Now, the number of designers I know that really, really struggle because they're coming along and if they're working for government, they know that government probably won't build their design. So some of the good ones won't even work for government. They always work with a contractor. And then, you know, government itself puts on so many restraints that actually stop good design because it says, well, I've done my master plan, I don't want to do it again. Or I've got my planning approval, so I don't really want to go out again. And we limit and limit and limit. And then we go, why don't we get innovation? So what we're trying to do here is genuinely have a level playing field and actually get that essence of something a little bit different. And that's the key. And the key is, guys, designers, you've got an opportunity here to actually produce a design that wins the bid for the builder. And that's a really quite a unique concept. Because usually, you know, the designer is parked away down there. Please provide a whole set of documentation for me so I can cost it, but we kind of know what we're going to build. You can choose what colour it is. And what we're trying to do here is say, is actually empower the designers. The people that win this project will win because they've got great designs. They're not going to win because they've got a great builder. They probably won't win because they've got a great financier. The winning bid will be because the design is smart, it looks good, it's efficient to build, it's sustainable, it's a great design. And they get that. It's actually driving what I think is what designers do best. I mean, I'm always amazed. If you give a designer 6 weeks to design something, he takes 6 weeks in 1 day. If you give him 3 weeks to design something, he takes 3 weeks in 1 day. Designers work to time frames. They work really, really well. And some of the innovation I've seen created over a few days, and you guys got your challenge with your project, it's about that. And you know, you don't necessarily need a long time to get good ideas. But I think the pressure, you know, the creativity is what it's all about.
John, did you?
Oh, look, that's fantastic. In terms of explaining how you've established a process that can actually draw much more value out of that design thinking, it's really good to hear. It was just more in reference to Richard's question. I think, you know, to have a city, a creative city that works well, if you like to use the ecology as an example, you need a deep ecology. I think the sort of projects Infrastructure New South Wales do tend to be at the larger end of the scale, but I guess it's you know, how within the whole city, within all the institutions and sort of people that can make the city, and have there's, you know, how do we sort of create a process that gives greater depth to that?
Well, I think UTS has been very great. I mean, they're going to create this fantastic new building. And everyone's actually, we really like it now. The city's lost its government. You know, I can take the ordinary design or the out there design. You know, it's more than my job's worth, mate. I'll take the ordinary design.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is encourage people to push boundaries. You know, if you just keep on producing mediocre, you're going to end up with a mediocre city.
Yeah.
Now, and then the challenge is to push government. You know, we want design excellence in the city, and we need it. And you get one good building, then you get another one, and it grows. It's fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. There's a risk aversion that we've been dealing with, but I think it's, you know, it'll depend a little bit, I think, on the success of something like the Chow Chak building. You know,
so I think
if
we go through these good buildings up, it will. And look, someone said to me, well, do you think this process will work? I said, of course it will work. I said, well, what if it doesn't? So I think I'll be probably collecting tickets in some southern railway station somewhere. But look, we've got a lot of faith in it, and I've worked on various projects around the world. I think this has got a great, I mean, we've got to manage it, we've got to deliver it, we've got to fend off the naysayers and say, guys, this is going to be a great project. And the good news is that the government are behind it. I mean, people can talk about projects and those sort of things, but the reality is you've actually, getting a project from an idea to getting it delivered, that's a really hard yard. And not getting all the nice stuff knocked off in the process. And that's the challenge.
Great.
Can I ask one?
Sure, please.
Tim, what's the infrastructure in New South Wales role in the interim period as we're leading up to this? You know, obviously there'll be a lot of groundwork that proponents are submitting at the end of August, and then you'll be making decisions. Once that decision's made, what happens around the site? We heard Chico talk about their responsibilities about maintaining that site and activating it. Does Infrastructure New South Wales have a role to play there?
Yeah, look, is it?
You know, how is that going to be coordinated?
Yeah, look, government's an interesting place. Infrastructure New South Wales has a thing called stepping powers, and that's how we stepped into this project.
Step in power.
Step in. Whoops.
Yeah,
Sounds like you stepped into something really quite bad, which I thought
Which
I
you
had.
probably did.
Step on or step in?
Step in, yeah, step on, step in, step on, yeah. So basically, the project was with Schiffer, and it was getting bigger than Ben Hur, and Infrastructure New South Wales were asked to step in. So we're actually responsible for the project. We have a responsibility to when you think about project, my view is successful projects, you've got to be, it's not just about building it, it's also about keeping that precinct alive. Now, we've allocated that responsibility to Schiffer. We're watching Schiffer very closely, and we're saying, guys, you know, my role is to be an agent provocateur, saying, no, I don't think it's quite good enough. You know, we want more events down there, what can we do? So we'll be managing that with Schiffer in close consultation. We've also got the challenge of trying to find some interim facilities, because when this place closes for 3 years, we still have exhibitions and conventions we want to hold, and so we're currently going through a very active process to find alternate locations for that. Yes.
Given that you just described having powers a little bit like the men in the sunglasses who come in and relieve the police of their duties.
That's right. Ding.
What can you do at that junction that's been shown earlier, where the UPN terminates at Darling Harbour and there's a sort of knot of infrastructure there?
Yeah,
what can you do to relieve that and connect that through?
Wait until the end of the year. Wait until the end of the year. We know the problem.
Yeah.
We don't see it as a problem.
Yeah.
We see it as an opportunity.
I'm not sure. Tim, you can't speak about any of those projects. No one's supposed to be speaking about them because there's these two competing bidders, and whenever, you know, in all of my consultations getting ready for this, everyone was whispering about it. Yeah, everyone's spoken to someone on the bid, everyone's involved. No one can tell you who they're involved with, but everyone's involved with someone.
You can't quote me, but.
Yeah. But they're all massively seem to be aspirationally overreaching the boundaries of things that we've been showing here, to address things like that, to talk specifically to the powerhouse about future strategies, to talk to different institutions, to talk to UTS. There's at different moments all through this massive kind of amorphous institution we're in. So I think that there's some very interesting, intelligent spatial thinking ranging around the city, working out where the problems are actually. And I think we won't see it until, I think that's
one of the things we're doing with the UPN is that it's a sort of, because you've got these two competitive bids, and as I said, the real competitiveness is which design is going to be better. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. So what we're doing is we run interactive processes. I'm going to go back to one this afternoon. So we see them, and look, I don't quite know what we're going to end up. They show me things, I think, just to see what see what the reaction is. And you know, we haven't quite had a hotel in the harbour yet. We've had a couple of things that have really pushed the boundary. And we're actually just saying, no, that's not going to work, mate. Save your time. The bidders love it because they go, oh, okay. And usually what we find is we're solving the problem for their internal fights. You know, because, and certainly the UPN, we will be giving a presentation to both bidders on that, and encouraging them to work through the solution so that it does match and it is coordinated. But the reality is we won't be able to show what the solution is until the end of the year.
Who was there? Oh, Marissa.
I don't have anything specific, but I was just wondering, all the presentations this morning kind of makes me wonder what the cultural referencing points we're locating the project within. And I'm just wondering, there seems to be this idea of competition, like having Sydney versus other global cities. But how do you retain locality? That's something I'm interested in. How do you make it so unique that you don't compete, say, with Hong Kong, but you actually have something that other cities will begin to cross-reference back to why, you know, this is a project of value? Because I see this happening all morning. You have Powerhouse Museum trying to be relevant and unique, creating amazing programming and trying to do online strategies. And that's still Powerhouse within its context. But then here you're dealing with really big scale economic
Yeah,
developments.
look, it is a challenge. Now, the thing about beating Melbourne is it's partly it's just to get the pollies to sign. Yes, Minister, it's bigger than Melbourne, good, you can sign here. The reality is Sydney is a different place to Melbourne, and the reality is our market. We shouldn't be necessarily competing with Melbourne and Adelaide and that. We should be competing with the Hong Kongs and the Singapores and Malaysia, and an overseas delegate. I think Michael Wright said it's about $7,000 economic benefit to the state for a delegate visiting here. It's enormous. It's so fundamental for the business case. The reference point of it, I don't know. It's going to be interesting on how you decide what that is. I think Darling Harbour is unique. The challenge for us is to retain the uniqueness but improve it. So that people say, when you come to Sydney, you've got to go to Darling Harbour. And more to the point, people that live in Sydney want to go to Darling Harbour rather than being forced to go with their mates from overseas. So we actually want to try and get Darling Harbour back for the people of Sydney, because the general trend is now is tourist-only zones don't work. What you actually want to try and do is create a zone that the people of Sydney think is great, so the tourists automatically want to be there. And it's going to be a balance.
I think also New South Wales is really lagging behind the other states in Australia in terms of competitive economic activity. I mean, it's a reality. Sydney's really lagging behind. So there's a subtext of anxiety in everyone's conversation about it. I mean, it's quite real, particularly given the economic growth in the mining states and Perth. I mean, we're seriously looking at Perth being a competitor at some point. I don't know. It's hard to imagine. But that's part of the anxiety. So I think there's scales and layers of operation, isn't there? You've got one has to compete with Hong Kong on per square metre floor area for an exhibition centre, but the kind of cultural locator point is a thing that's decided almost in another conversation, isn't it, David?
I think it was a really interesting point. It's great to have an outside observer, another outside voice coming in, because I don't think there's been any comment yet, maybe there'll be other speakers who bring that, about what the qualities are in Sydney that are most contributing to the sort of cultural capital we're already creating. I know that there's a lag, and I completely understand the idea of aspirational models and an idea of international competitiveness. But other than a kind of vague statement about the harbour and its qualities in Sydney, I don't think there's been a lot. It doesn't sound there's a lot contributing to this argument about what we can build on. And I know that the international observers of Sydney are envious of some of our qualities in terms of the proximity to the Asia-Pacific region and the mix of ethnicity and our youngness and our ability to change shape rapidly based on the fact that we're a very young city.
Well, I think that's right. And I think, I know we've been talking to the UTS and they've done quite a bit of work on tourism. But one of the industries that we're finding really is actually getting data. Real data. And as you say, what does drive this? Where is the research that says that people talk about intellectual capital, it's a fantastic buzzword. What does it mean? What does it relate to in terms of dollars? And as you say, why come to Sydney? The dollar's high, why come? People keep coming. We did some research that said, well, what would happen? Has the market dropped markedly since the dollar's reached parity? No, we're still falling. So there's something about Sydney that, it's not the dollar, it's not that, it's something about it. It does attract people, and people love coming here. Okay.
On that note, it's lunchtime. Thank you so much.